All right, so it is February 2nd, and welcome to UpSkill Community. I'm Michelle Shaw, and tonight we're talking about the new mindset that we need for this new context. And for all of our viewers, we're recording in Black History Month, Black Futures Month. So I want to acknowledge that and say happy Black Futures Month, and that we celebrate this special month with all of the people in our community who are either part of the community or contribute to the community or are allies to the community. Together, we move forward to better Black futures. So tonight we're talking about mindset. And I really want us to begin to think about what this means when we talk about mindset. What is a mindset? When someone says your mindset, or when we talk about our mindset, what do we think about? What is it? What do we see, say, feel? So I'm going to turn it over and hear from you. What is a mindset? Let's start.
Like mindset for me is like a frame of mind. It's the way that you frame your thoughts. It's kind of your lens on things, your outlook, maybe a set of kind of thoughts and feelings around what you're doing and how you approach things.
Thank you. Yes.
And I guess for me, it is more of the way you look at the world, which ultimately determines kind of how you view challenges, setbacks, your approach to solutions, and also your emotions.
Yes, I think you're spot on. It's really around the lens that we use to interpret the world. And I think for me, I believe that the mindset is so important. Like really, I don't believe we should talk about anything else until we first talk about the mindset that we're using to talk about those other things. Because if we're talking about a learning environment, for instance, it's important to understand the mindset that we're using to enter that space. If we're talking about a leadership environment, it's important to understand the mindset that the leader brings to it. If we're talking about people entering a space, collaborating, it's really important the mindset that they bring to that. So I really believe that the mindset is the foundation of all of this. And so I'm going to give a minute just for you to type in the chat. What are some of the things that concern you about your own mindset? What are some of the things that are working well with you for your mindset? And what are the things you need to be thinking about? Sylvia is doing a bingo. Good evening, Sylvia. We're talking about mindset and the definitions of mindset. And so I want you just to think about how you defined mindset in a minute. And I'm just going to give a minute. I see Havanita coming in to the room. And just give me one moment. I'll be right here. I see Diana coming back in as well. And just give me a moment. Please update them on what we're doing when they enter.
I'll make sure I'm not the only one typing in what I want to improve on my mindset. Make sure everyone else is doing that too before I send this.
You stopped talking. I thought you were talking. So Diana and Sylvia and Havanita, we're talking about your own definition of mindset. What comes to mind? How do you define mindset? I see some answers in the chat. Okay, so
I think I was
talking about.
Go
ahead, Kadeem.
Sorry, I think I was responding to the query. I think you had also asked how to, what do you want to improve about your mindset? That was what my answer was geared towards.
Yes, what did you want to improve? Adaptable and even tempered, you said you are. And want to work on pessimism, also want to be less analytical and live in the moment. That's great. I think you may have a whole host of people who agree with you and on that that same perspective. Remaining consistent in my positive mindset and not doubt in myself. Okay, so that's a great one as well. I think we live in a world of doubt in ourselves. Me too. The lens is used to make sense of the world, be present and mindful. All right, so we have a lot of things that we're going to talk about tonight. And I just want to start off by saying, if you have not yet followed us on LinkedIn, please follow us. If you have not yet signed up for our events page, please make sure to do so. And I'm going to make sure that I post those in the chat just in case you have not yet done so. Ride the wave of doubt and uncertainty. Ride in that wave. That's important. I've posted in the link for the events page, so you get notified for our events. This is the link for our page on LinkedIn, UpSkill community page. And this is the link for our podcast. Please subscribe to our podcast. All right. So tonight we're going to talk about a few things, just use a few questions to guide our conversation. And so really how to cultivate this new mindset for the new context in which we're living is going to be the key question. And that's all we're going to deliberate tonight. I have provided a few questions to guide us through that conversation and just some information from Harvard Business School, because they've done a lot of great research and work on mindset. And we know that the work of Carol Dweck has done a lot in this field as well. I see Dwayne say, I'm experiencing connectivity issue. Is it me or everyone experiencing the same? So we're not having any issues on our end, Dwayne, so perhaps on your end. So maybe you're not alone. I see Havanita maybe having issues as well because she's coming back in. Not sure. All right, I'm glad you're here. All right, so what the research is saying coming out of Harvard is that this is foundational to how we think, whether we're leaders or learners or both. Foundational to how we think. And if you understand the importance of how we think and frame and interpret the world around us for how we behave, then you understand how important the mindset is for us. And so we already know that what the mindset says, it really says how we can differentiate people. And I'm going to share a story with you, which is a very popular story. And I'm not sure if you are familiar with it, but it's a story of when they sent years ago, it was a British shoe manufacturer that sent 2 salesmen to Africa. Did you hear about the story? And they were supposed to figure out what was the market like in Africa for shoes. And so one of the salesmen came back and said, look, there's no potential here. Nobody wears shoes. And the second salesman said, send all the shoes you can. Nobody wears shoes. And so nobody was wearing shoes. It's really, what do you see? How are you interpreting what you see? Nobody's wearing shoes. 2 salesmen went, both came back with 2 different verdicts. One said, we're not going to sell any shoes here because they don't wear shoes. One said, send all the shoes you can because nobody wears shoes. Same situation. It's the mindset that makes the difference. The interpretive lens. Everybody sees it, may see it the same way, but interpret it in different ways. That's what we're talking about. And so what we're going to do is have this conversation, and I'm going to actually do 2 small groups and answer these questions. And I know you have plenty ideas, so I'm not going to get in the way of you generating these ideas. I'm going to I'm going to put you in breakout rooms, 2 breakout rooms, and we're going to work on breakout rooms. I don't think I'm seeing your breakout rooms. Yeah, here you go. I have too many screens. Okay, so we're going to do 2 breakout rooms. And these are the questions I want you to think about. And then when you come back in, what I want you to do is to have a 3-point plan for someone who needs to work on their mindset. 3 things that they need to do in order to improve their mindset. Can someone explain to me what we're going to do in the breakout room?
We're going to come up with 3 strategies to improve our mindset.
Okay, easy. All right, I'm going to send you into the rooms now, and you'll have 15 minutes in these rooms, and then we'll come back and have a talk about it. See you soon. Go ahead.
So there are a number of things that we came up with. I don't know if it's 3, but one of the big things was just taking the time to reflect, which came out of a conversation around using kind of external stimulus, like other people telling you, hey, you need to change your mindset, or you should take a different perspective on this, and taking that feedback from sort of trusted friends and colleagues who are around you, taking the time to reflect when you may not see that yourself, that's very helpful. We talked about like meditation, and I guess that goes along the same lines of the reflection, taking time to really think it through, taking time for yourself, and meditation was one example. Also, like affirmations and things like that, sort of positive self-talk. And it's along the same lines of what we said first, kind of just letting others reflect back to you sort of what they're seeing, which is going to help you to see where you can make changes and improvements. And when we were finishing up, myself and Sylvia were just talking about practicing something until it becomes natural. And I was just about to start into the conversation about that kind of like system 1 and system 2 thinking, where it's like, you have the one set of thinking that's your snap to decision, and you don't really take the time to reflect. And then the other system is sort of your more rational, taking the time to reflect and taking all the information in. And you can transition from one to the other by practicing, because it's not necessarily natural when you initially do it, but when you continue to practice over and over, it becomes that sort of innate thinking. So along some of the similar lines to what we were discussing, but just as maybe another strategy, having faith that eventually, if you practice it enough, that it will become an innate quality that you have.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So Kadeem, Covell, Diana, and Havanita.
Thank you. So I'll go just for strategies. First one I was talking about was something I'll probably delve into more next week as well, but just was the idea of looking at progress, not perfection. Something that I think has helped me a lot when it comes to how you receive negative feedback, how you achieve goals, looking at making kind of small improvements to whatever that goal is over the course of time, as opposed to thinking that it's something that needs to be done, kind of looking at tasks, basically something that can be done very quickly. So, I guess in the case of, starting a business or something like that, it's looking at making a long-term plan, building it up over a few months, making small steps towards that goal each day, as opposed to thinking that basically something that needs to get done very quickly. And also when you're starting something, looking at how you've improved with it, that can apply from everything to, working out, to how you did with customers and so forth. It's all about just the improvements you can make, as opposed to kind of getting, to being exactly where you want to be. And just understand this kind of like everything can be a long haul sometimes. It's all about improvements over a long period of time.
Okay. Anybody else wanted to add anything to that?
I think too, one of the themes that came up in our group is it's about future. It's about not getting stuck, and not, sometimes we get stuck in what's not working, and then you're in the present stuck with like, I can't do anything. And one of the things that I really liked from one of our team members was about futuristic thinking. and about not getting stuck in places, but having always something to move forward to in terms of future, and that her what keeps her optimistic and positive is having that goal and that futuristic thinking and working on herself to get there. So she doesn't get pulled into all the other stuff that's going on, because she's focusing on her future and what she needs to do to get there. And I think the other thing I heard too was sometimes and discouragement happens, and we can be doing our best in trying to run businesses, especially for people that are self-employed and have trying to keep people employed, and especially in an environment like today when people are constantly just quitting or not staying. And one of the things that I really loved about what she said was that she's now decided that and it goes back to, and I always say this Jack Canfield quote, because it really resonated with what she was saying, is that we can't always control the things that happen, but we can control our reactions, what impacts our outcomes. And the only thing you have control over is your attitude in life. That's it.
Yeah.
Our attitudes are so incredibly powerful. It is the only thing we have control over. And so she said, what I'm decided to do is, because this turnover keeps happening and it's frustrating because my business can't go as far as I want it to, because I'm, ahead, and then I'm back because people are jumping ship. And now she's really investing in, I'm going to train them and really give them something to stay for. And so again, it's that, I think it's that mindset that goes to solution focused. And at the same time, what is it that people need? And in thinking about those aspects of it too. So I really appreciated the conversations.
Awesome. Awesome. What about, I saw something on Instagram, and it said 2 traps to avoid. And one of them is caring what people think and thinking that they care. And I thought that would be something that would really resonate with you. Caring what they think and thinking that they care. That is really, if you take a moment to really digest that, that is something to really, really consider when we're talking about mindset. Anyone wanted to say anything on that? Caring what they think and thinking that they care. Go, Sylvia. You're on mute.
Yes, and I guess there is an element of caring about what people think, in the sense that when you receive feedback, I want to believe that someone is giving me feedback because they care.
Yes.
So if we don't care about what people think, and we're not selective in that selection, perhaps, we may be missing really good advice. And then thinking that people care. I guess sometimes I have conversations about this with my mother, because she says, oh, I can't go out like this because what they would say. And I say, do they pay for your food? And she goes, no, but I still have to interact with them. So we always have this, the wisdom of her long life, and then my trying to take this attitude that I don't care what they think, but you need to care because people do care. But I mean, the extent to which we let that affect us, I guess.
I think that Sylvia's right on, because the statement is too extreme.
Yes.
And so it's when it stifles you, when you're not able to move or not able to do things because you're so concerned with what people think. That's when you're going to a basement, right? But I think it's a balancing act, and I agree with Sylvia completely on that. I think that it's you can't just say no, because it is important in certain situations.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Tiffany.
And I think the spirit of the quote is around the fact that so many people, especially when it's put out on social media, so many people are just so invested in what everybody else thinks about them. And it's not necessarily coming from a place of, am I a good person? Am I, whatever, of good moral character, or am I doing the right things? Should I be consulting with someone so I can be better? I think it's more about how people get caught up in the cycle of just caring so much about what others think that they can't even be themselves, can't be authentic, they can't be happy because they're so busy and so constrained and stifled by other people's opinions. So the sort of quote on social media especially is a very good reminder, but I feel like our community has helped us to recognize, yeah, you know what other people think is actually really good, depending on where it's coming from, that the feedback's important, but more broadly in the sort of social media realm, I think that it's actually really important advice for a lot of people. But it definitely is not either or, and there's some room definitely to be caring what people think.
Yeah.
And thinking that they care, because a lot of people do care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
And I liked how Sylvia entered that conversation with yes and, because that's one of the mindset shifts that is on my list. It's little things that we do to shift our mindset intentionally. So as you talked about earlier, you talked about the importance of thinking. If a mindset is a way of thinking, then we have to recognize that we rarely are actually thinking about our thinking, right? Which is why I see reflection, meditation, those activities came up a lot. If we are supposed to be able to figure out what lens are we taking into the world, then what you talked about, system 1, system 2 thinking, system 1 being that unconscious way in which we go through the world with just our usual patterns of behavior and patterns for thinking and interpreting, versus system 2 when we intentionally stop and examine our thinking and to go about it a little bit more methodically to see, okay, what am I doing here? And so if, as we say, mindset is about thinking, then as leaders, as learners, are we actually taking time to think about that thinking? That's one of the questions that I want to throw back in. The other one that came out of your conversation is also this idea of others, the role of others in helping us to define, identify, and improve our mindset. And the conversation was really good in terms of this feedback process, this mirror that others hold up to us to give us a better sense. And last year when we did the Self-Awareness for Leaders program at UpSkill Community, you remember we talked about internal and external awareness coming out of the work of Tasha Eurich, and the importance that we don't develop self-awareness on our own in our own heads, that others participate in this process, and it is through feedback and discovery that happens. So we could never ignore everyone and everything that comes from others as part of this, but there's a danger in being reliant on the ideas of others to carve out and to figure out where we fit in society. I know that in one of our sessions, Kadeem had shared a story, and I think it would be a helpful story here. It's a story of how we listen to others on social media through likes, thumbs up. And so we get caught up in what people think of us through likes, but then the likes are not always real. And Kadeem, I want you to share the story of that influencer who had those millions of people and had that t-shirt campaign. Can you share that story? Because I think that's going to be helpful for us to see why some forms of listening may not be beneficial, but other forms are very helpful, and we have to discern when to listen, who to listen to, and how to listen. That's part of our thinking process. Sorry, Kadeem, go ahead.
No worries. So I think there was an influencer, I believe her name was Ari, A-R-I-I. So she had, at the time that this had happened, I believe it was at least a year ago, but she had over 1 million followers from what I remember. And then they started a campaign. You have to, sell 36 shirts. I believe it was the number is 36. And that was the idea. Sell with 36, and then that will allow her to launch a clothing company. And then basically she launched that campaign, thousands of likes, but then not able to sell 36 shirts though. It's just the gap between likes, which is just so easy to give out. They're very quick, takes a few seconds to hit that, but that does not always translate over to real engagement, where it's actually reading your content, buying your products, and so forth. That's not the type of listening that you get from that. Just something that's much more hollow.
Yes. And so we have to also I wanted to share that story because as we're listening, part of the listening and the thinking, we have to be really careful because sometimes we have confirmation bias where we listen to people who tell us what we want to hear, or we go to the sources where we believe we will hear exactly what we want to hear to confirm what we already think. And we get locked in our echo chamber, hearing ideas much like ours. And that is the dangerous place to be. However, we also have to be able to discern what is authentic, what is real, what resonates, what helps us to move forward, and what is just flattery or even destructive and disruptive for us. We are the ones that have to use that filter for the feedback. We have to filter the feedback, filter out, for instance, someone is saying something really meaningful and helpful to us, but they're too emotional and angry. And so just because of that emotion, we throw everything out. And we don't pull out of it the seed there, that little germ of truth that would be helpful, because we conflate everything with the anger and just toss everything out. So how do we filter out from the feedback that the world gives to us in different forms what is important? And also, one of the key things here is how do we stay true to ourselves? So an opposite story to the one that Kadeem talks about is, for instance, sharing on social media, and people measure success by 1 million likes. But there are people on social media who get 5 likes and are much more successful in their social media campaigns than some of those getting 1 million likes. So it's for you to define what is success. What are these goals? What are you doing it for? How do you get to this outcome? What are the things that you need to do? Those are the things that will help us to maintain the mindset that we're looking at. So I want to hear your thoughts on how do we navigate this space where we rely on others to get the feedback, that external awareness to be able to move ourselves forward. But we can't take everything that comes back to us wholesale. We have to go through this process. How do we, if we already have a messed up mindset, how do we trust ourselves to filter appropriately and not be biased in what we pick to make sure that we feel good? How do we challenge ourselves to be open and honest and to be willing to take those risks, to hear the tough things, to challenge the ways that we're doing it? How do we navigate that? This is what I'm anxious to hear. Pavel?
I'm sitting there, I'm trying to do the math. or the economics of it. And I'm thinking, equilibrium, and I'm still processing, where, the self meets the, the others. That's what we're working on, right? And so, it's not as easy as supply demands, and so where it meets, that's where it's happening. I'm just still trying to work it. That's a loaded one for me.
It is. It is.
So
it is.
yeah, come back. Please.
Diana, were you saying something?
I was appreciating what she was saying. I
Yes.
think that for me, I solicit feedback. I actually ask for it. I don't wait for it to be given, because my mindset is open to development. But in saying that, I am very careful who I solicit it from. I want to make sure that the person that is credible to me, I have respect for, that will be honest with me in terms of saying, these are the areas you're strong in and these are the areas you're not. And this is where I can see improvement. And if I solicit it, I'm asking for that. So I don't feel it's being given to me. I'm giving, my permission to give it. And I would never go to somebody that I didn't trust to tell you the truth, as a colleague that knows my work, that knows what I'm doing. So they have insight into it. And I think that when you start that way, and I always say, and I this came up in our small group conversation. I had a director years ago, and she said to me, every time I give you feedback, and this was a person that I trusted, she said, every time I give you feedback, Diana, it's a gift. Please accept my gifts. And so when somebody of a trusted source gives me feedback, in my mind, I always remember what Maureen said. And I think, thank you. You're doing this to help me. you're doing this to make me the best person that I can be, the best in the role that I can be. And but I think you need to we get more comfortable with it, and we feel safer with it when we ask for it and we have go-to people.
Yes, and I am very happy you shared that, because knowing some of the sources where you can go and solicit feedback is important. But feedback comes in so many forms all around us, and sometimes the very people we trust don't have the lens to provide us some of the feedback that fills our gap areas. And so we also, if we choose who to go to, we run the risk of locking ourselves in an echo chamber of people whose judgment we trust, people who are probably very much like us. And so it's almost like if you're in one political party, you get all your feedback from that political party, and you don't go to the opposition to hear how they feel about you. And it doesn't mean you're going to do everything they say, but you get a sense of, that's how they see this. That's really interesting.
Yeah, but I think if you again go to a person that knows your work, knows you, and I said gives you the good and the bad. They're not just focusing, and they have to really understand the work that you do to give you credible feedback, but is also not afraid to say, this is where you come short.
Yeah, those are the best people to get feedback from, the people who will tell it like it is, even when it's painful, even when you can't listen anymore, that they just be like, this is what it is. So that's one thing that I wanted us to flag up, is the importance of the external lens, different perspectives shining on us, even if we don't agree with it, even if we don't take it on board, but just have those filters out for listening to different ways that people perceive us, how people see us, and so on. That's one thing. And the feedback, the way Sylvia responded earlier, is one of the tips that I wanted us to intentionally work on. And all of us are going to work on this together. It's replacing the buts with and. That's a hard one. But intentionally, every time you hear yourself say but, just kind of correct it, and let's all work on this together. And as we're part of this community, if we hear each other using but, let's remind each other, just jump in and say and. Let's just keep using that word and to we say but is an eraser word. We say in sales terminology, it erases everything you've said before. The presentation was really good, but erase the presentation was really good. But if you say and, there's one additional thing I want you to consider, right? Okay, so Sylvia and Cavell are on it. Go for it.
Yes, and thank you. And it's one that it's been an exercise of accepting that, like you said, Michelle, the people that I love me. And yes, they will tell me what I need to hear and what I want to hear as well, right? Like there'll be a mix. And there's also an opportunity to be surprised. So sometimes without seeking the advice, so that would be the one I seek, and I can't. I'm biased. I don't want to be too uncomfortable when I get feedback. Like, let's be honest. Like, some discomfort, yes, but let's be honest, who likes to have like total discomfort?
Take it easy.
Take it easy. Like, I remember a boss of mine used to say, Sylvia, I will give you feedback without anesthesia. And I was like, no, use some anesthesia, because I want to hear it, but I don't want to feel it. and let me
That's a good
process
one, Sylvia. I want to hear it, but I don't want to feel it. I'm borrowing that. I love it.
Please. But at the same time, it's like there are places where you go, and then like sometimes even young people, and I say young people as someone who's seeing herself, getting into the older category, that surprised me with their wisdom. And because of that, I'm open to just listening to that. And those are not people that I think of going to for advice. Those are the people that they see me as someone I need to give them advice. But they have such perspectives, such freshness in life, that is just so beautiful to sort of see for a moment through their eyes. And so, yeah, in that sense, that I love the surprises and the wisdom that comes from unexpected places.
Yes. That's really important. And as we are working on our mindset and continuing to make sure that we're improving and evolving, so that, if you think about our growth process, that we are not dying out, our mindset is not withering away, but that as we get older, as we grow in any way, that our mindset is evolving and ready to tackle what's out there in front of us.
Yeah.
And I remember having a conversation with a man, he was 95 years old. And I was asking him, how do you compare your generation from this generation? And he said, you know what? They're more brilliant than us. I love how they're evolving the ideas. Everything that I think about, they have a fresh perspective on it. And I thought, wow, like this 95-year-old really had some freshness in his perspective. So it's great to get all of these different ideas from different places and we pull them together. But it's our responsibility to do the sense making.
Yeah.
It's our responsibility to ingest what we want to ingest and filter out. Those are decisions that we make, but exposing ourselves to all of the ideas is a responsibility.
Yeah, it keeps me
So,
fresh, man. Keeps me fresh,
yeah.
keeps me dancing to their music.
So we're going to say and instead of but. We're all going to work on that. All right. So then the next one, and Sylvia, you're the inspiration for this again, is how we greet each other. So Sylvia, you said this to me yesterday about greeting. Sylvia was saying that the way that we greet each other is important. Did you want to go, Sylvia?
Okay. Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
One thing that we don't do enough for people, or we wait too long to say, is nice things about what we see in people.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I appreciate about Michelle, and I said, I'm going to tell her straight up, is when she meets people, she goes, how do you do? And it sounds so elegant, such an elegant and singular way of greeting, like to me, right? Like, this is Michelle for me. And how do you do? And how are you? How lovely. And I said, like, I just need to give that back to you and just tell you how much I really appreciate it and like it. And I think, yeah,
Thank
those
you
things
very
are
much.
necessary to say. Because if I wait, and I'm not prognosticating anybody dying, even me or that or you, I just don't want to hear this at some funeral celebration of life. I want you to hear it now.
Thank you very much. So gratitude is a really important part of a mindset. Thank you very much, Sylvia, for sharing that. Gratitude is really important to anyone who, as the studies show that Harvard did all this research, and all of the leaders that they consider to have the kind of leadership mindset have a gratitude mindset. So gratitude is a really big deal, and it brings really wonderful things into your life. This greeting that Sylvia is talking about didn't happen by accident. So when we're here tonight talking about some specific changes that we want to make in like what we say, like shifting from but to and, it's hard to do because we're trained to use but if we are intentional and we're thinking about it, it's easier for us to say, I said but a while ago. And over time, if we're intentional, we can do it. Many years ago, I was listening to people. When you said, how are you? People would say things like, not too bad. And I always think to myself, so if you're not too bad, but then how are you though? Like what I'm not too bad. What does that mean? And I made it intentional that I would not be using that kind of word to describe how I am, that I would, part of that would be grateful for, I'm feeling fantastic, I'm lovely. I would always use a word that elevates me in my greeting. And that's something that I want to encourage you to do, to think about it and to be intentional about how you respond when someone asks you, how are you doing? As long as I always say, as long as I'm above ground, it's a fantastic day. So how are you doing? Let's think about what we put out there about how we're doing. And I was grateful that Sylvia said that, but it's something that I've taken for granted now because I've done it for a long time. But it's evidence that people are receiving the little changes that we're making are having an impact out there. So the greeting was the second thing that we're working on changing. And the third one will be harder. Thank you very much. Give people their flowers. I'll take mine now. Thank you. The third one that I think would be a great one for us to work on is the use of the term, I'm sorry. So I'm sorry is very important, but there are ways that you can reframe I'm sorry to make it super positive. So for instance, yesterday I went into class right on the money. I'm usually in class way earlier, so students know I'm coming, I'm there, and they can chit chat with me before. So when I go in, before I made this shift in my head, I would say, I'm sorry for being late, or I'm so sorry I wasn't here earlier. Instead, I said, thank you for waiting. It's really, so that's one way that I am reframing the apology. Like, thank you very much for waiting. It is an apology. It's recognizing that they have been waiting and so on. So we can think about ways that you can use that. Sometimes it conjures up a more positive energy for people. And really, when we're talking about shifting our mindset, we're not doing it as an end in itself. We're doing it so that we are better versions of ourselves, to have better relationships with others, to have the opportunity and ability to inspire them to do better and to themselves be better versions of themselves. And part of that is us demonstrating what that looks like, right? So what are the 3 things we're working on?
Waiting.
Mhm.
But
Switch.
instead of and,
Attitude.
Switching but to and.
Yeah.
Mhm. And
Avoiding I'm
So-
sorry. Why?
I'm sorry.
see, that one
you
I
don't,
think is interesting.
don't need to
because-
avoid it. You need to think
Okay.
about when it's appropriate. You shouldn't avoid, I'm sorry. You need to think about, for instance, like I said, I'm on time, but it would be my normal quick response to be apologizing even when I haven't done anything wrong. Apologizing for showing up on time because I have set the expectation that I'll be there ahead of time. So in this case, I'm just going to say thank you for waiting. So think about ways where it's more appropriate to say thank you for reminding me of this. Thank you for setting this up for me, when you can use thank you instead of I'm sorry. Really
Yeah.
balance the use of both of those.
Nice. It's a nice.
Go
it's a
ahead.
Nice balance. It's a nice
Yeah.
balance. It's a nice
Yes.
balance.
Yes.
For me, it has the. I find that we don't say I'm sorry enough, even when we scrape people up. It's a lot. So for me,
Yes.
I'm sorry is sacred, but I love the way you frame it. It's like position it as with quality. Thank you for that.
And remember, when we overuse I'm sorry, also it loses the sacred thing that you're talking about. And so
Yeah.
it's important that we're balancing. Like I said, if you're showing up half an hour late for class, you definitely need to go deep in your I'm sorry bag, but you're on time, so you don't need to be apologizing. Thank you for waiting is good in that situation. So I think it's important to balance those two, depending on what you're doing, depending on your role, and so on. Sometimes people have expectations that you can't meet, and you're going to be apologizing for something that you've done nothing wrong. You could not have done any better, or that is not a reasonable expectation. That's when thank you is really appropriate.
And I
Thank you
think
for your
that-
patience. Mhm.
I think that actually is a good way to kind of sum up how small things can shift your mindset. Because I remember even previously you mentioning with the elementary school kids, instead of
Mhm.
telling them don't run, you say please
Mhm.
walk.
Yes.
So it's kind of just a
Yes.
more positive way of saying the same thing. So whether it's I'm sorry or it's something else, just helping to shift and package what you're saying to be more positive, which I think when you package it in a different way also helps others to have a more positive mindset. I think someone talked about energy and how that energy is contagious. Anybody who hears don't is going to have a little bit more of a negative defensive reaction. Whereas if you're like, please, whatever it may be, it's a little bit more palatable. So.
And that's a really important point, Tiffany, because one of the things that we see with early childhood, for instance, children are told all the things that they shouldn't do, and nobody bothers to tell them what they shouldn't do. Stop running, don't do this, don't do that. But what am I to do? And so if we change the narrative, like instead of saying don't run, and say please walk, instead of stop screaming, please use your indoor voice, you're really telling them what to do, and that can work really well. It works just the same for us as adults, and you better believe that saying to someone, thank you so very much for your patience that is actually a way of apologizing to people, showing appreciation for the acknowledges, not apologies, an acknowledgement of the fact that they've been waiting there for this kind of time. So that's not always appropriate. When you harm people, there's a different way to deal with it. But we use, as Sylvia says, save I'm sorry for those sacred situations, and learn to use thank you. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for flagging this up to me. Thank you. I missed. Thank you for the reminder. Instead of, oh, I'm so sorry, I overlooked your email. Thank you very much for that reminder. It can be something very beneficial. Use it appropriately, but both in balance. Taking feedback in balance. All of these things that we're talking about in balance, and the balance comes from you. You're the architect, you're the designer. It's you, it's your mindset. What the mindset do you want? How do you want to transform it or not? And so you will ingest what you need based on the outcomes that you desire when it comes to your mindset. What is really critical, and Harvard has done a lot of work, they've developed the MSK framework around this, is that you need not teach anyone anything until you've set the foundation. It's like planning to plant a crop and you haven't prepared the soil. If the soil isn't fertile, you waste the best quality seeds. So the mindset is that fertile ground that we prepare in order to plant the seeds, whether that is a skill that they need to develop, whether there is some knowledge that they need to learn, whether that's an interaction. We need to make sure our mindsets are in place like that. And so that is something we need to intentionally be thinking about, as you talked about, reflecting on, meditating, getting feedback on throughout. Avenita, I'll take final words from you and Dwayne.
I was here enjoying everything. I didn't have anything to say. Thank you though, but I'll really pass on this one. The only thing I really have to say is that, as Tiffany said, those little things that you pick up on, those little things that you utilize, it actually do transform how you go about everything. It sets a foundation that changes you as an individual. So those bits and pieces of changing the but to and changing the thank you. I'm sorry to thank you. Those little things, those little nuggets they are super. We're called super nuggets. Yeah.
Yes. And remember that we're not going to get it right away. We need to remind each other, and we need to be intentional about it. That but to and, oh, I've been in the middle of that but many times and try to see if I can roll it back down my throat to come out with the and. But if you're honest with people that I'm working on changing this, please, if you hear me say it, touch me, stop me. It really works. It's a little thing, but as Kadim said at the beginning, when you gave your feedback, it's not the big things sometimes that make the difference. It's the little things. It's how we greet each other. It's how we say thank you. It's how we say and instead of but. And someone is talking and you're just waiting to butt in, but. But if we start with and, it's continuing, it's adding, it's not taking away, it's not erasing value. It's respectful. And so if we change these little things in how we go about our business, we can inspire others around us. They may not tell us, but we are making a difference. And that's why we're here. Whether we're leading or learning, we're here to be better versions of ourselves. And it will not start anywhere if the lens through which we interpret our world doesn't change. Remember, back to the story we started with. 2 salesmen go to the same country, observe the same fact. Everybody is going barefoot. One sees the opportunity, one can't see it. It's all about the lens. They see the same thing. The mindset is what tells you how they interpret it. And one gets an opportunity and one is lost. What I want to make sure for us is that we are able to take these opportunities, see them, make sense of them, interpret them in the ways that benefit us and others around us. I'll leave the last word to Dwayne.
Okay, drum roll. I'm glad in hearing the wrap up and everybody's feedback in the last. So part of my day, I had a clash with a 16-year-old daughter.
Oh.
And as I hear you wrap up just now, and was it Tiffany remind you about the story about the infant school? Don't run, please walk. I am now thinking I'm on my way home. Now, how can I reapply myself? Because part of my even joining this group is leadership and self-growth and self leadership, especially being a parent. And I'm thinking now, oh, I'm gonna take something away from tonight, which I'm excited about, to go have a conversation in reapplying myself, because I think there's something I need to tweak. You know,
Very
the
good.
butt to the end, the showing appreciation and saying I'm sorry. Those are the tweak. And so I hear you, I hear everyone wrapping up. I'm like, okay, what can I take away now? Because I need to have a conversation with my daughter tonight, so she can understand where I'm coming from, and I could lead her as a father than clash with her, because it's not going to get me the result that I'm seeking. So I thank everyone for their input, and wish me well. Well, thank you all.
Yes, and Dwayne, and it's a great way to start off. Like, say to her, when I come, I want to speak to you. And Dwayne, start it off. Thank you so much for meeting with me and giving me this opportunity to review what happened today with you. You start off with thank you.
All right, so
Can I say
I'm not
one?
saying thank you all for the nuggets.
Yeah, the other one I'll say is anytime on the very, very rare occasion that one of my parents started off with an apology, I nearly passed out and died. So that may be a time to actually use I'm sorry, because
Yeah.
I think as parents, we don't often do that. And it helps to teach our kids, hey, you know what? I don't always show up as my best self. And even when they're dead wrong, just saying, I'm sorry that we got into this is a really nice and helpful place to start. Or I found that was helpful, especially when I was a teenage girl, which wasn't that long ago.
Yes.
Not long ago.
Last year, actually, right? So, Dwayne, let's use all of the things we just summed up into your conversation with your daughter. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to review what happened today. I'm really sorry about what happened today. And I want to go this over with you to see how we could review this and start it anew, or to restart or review it or something like that. All right.
Most definitely. Thank you all.
All right. Excellent. Excellent. Cavell?
Yeah, I had my hand up before long ago, right? But that's fine. So this is not, sorry to interrupt the final word thing, but just
Never
something I
mind.
wanted.
Your final word belongs to you.
All right. Thanks. Whilst I was thinking through, an example came to mind in that feedback section. I'm not sure if I processed it all correctly, but just resolving that feedback and that mindset thing. And I remember this example of an instrument we did at work some time ago, where students were to give feedback, but something that was outstanding on that for me and stood out in terms of feedback was the fact that before they got the opportunity to say what the other person was doing, correctly and so on, based on the items, the first section was about, their own responsibility and, their own contribution to the process. And for me, the feedback made a difference, because it wasn't only about, just in that workspace. It wasn't just about giving feedback on what I was doing. In this case, it was a mutual relationship. So, just for them to review and reflect and say, okay, well, this was my role. Was I attending also to my role? It made it balanced, and I received the feedback a little bit more, a little bit better, because at least I know the person had the opportunity to judge self as well, or analyze self as well. So it wasn't just one party there, being reviewed. So I don't know if that that balance for me was very important. from it, and so the feedback was well received in that case. All right, because I'm
So-
thinking the motive was not about just scrutinizing one party, but looking at a process and you know how we can make, you know, each person in this relationship better. Yes. So that example came, I don't know, you know, what it's
It's
worth.
a
I don't
great
want you to share
example.
it.
It's a great
Yes.
example, Pavel, because it's a shame because we don't have enough time to cover all elements of mindset tonight, but one of the key tenets of mindset is ownership and personal responsibility. So what you're saying there, that they took responsibility for their role in it, and that made it easier for you to receive your responsibility in your part. And that's really a big deal when it comes to working on that mindset. So that was great. I want to
Okay.
close off with a final piece, a final one, which is being able to support and celebrate each other is fundamental to the mindset that we're working on, particularly in leadership and learning spaces. And I'm going to tell two stories, and Tiffany, you're going to close with one story that you already told me. But I was watching a video about what we can do when we support and elevate each other. And there is a young child and he's trying to do a particular vault in gymnastics, and everybody else is sitting on the stage, and he's tried it a couple times and he can't get over it, and they send him back, and he tried it like 3 times and he can't get over it. And unprompted, all the kids on the stage got up, hugged him, and said their little chant like 1, 2, 3, huh? And they went back and sat down, and magically he jumped over it. And, you know, it was just to see how much higher we can climb, how much more we can lift ourselves when we have support, when people celebrate and elevate us. And it's a habit that we have to get into. I'm seeing it more with the younger kids, but we as adults have to come to that place as a significant shift in mindset, that we're not all like, if I give her this, she's going to look better than me. If I share this idea, then she'll be better off than me. So I can't share that. I'm going to hide this idea because even though I'm not using it, but she could use it and be better off. If I give him this, he's going to look better than my husband. I'm not going to give him this. We have these negative processes in our heads where we can't give ourselves fully and openly. We can't elevate and celebrate others in that full sense. And I think a little child shall lead. And I told you that story there, and Tiffany had told me a story, and I wanted her to close out with that story, a bingo story you told me.
Oh, the bingo story. Okay. So my son Spencer is 5 years old, and he goes to an after-school program at his he goes to martial arts, and they pick him up at school and bring him for after-school program. And they play bingo several times a week. And yesterday, his sort of after-school program coordinator came out and said, I really want to share this story with you. I think you'll be so proud. And I was like, okay, you know, he obviously like must have chopped a board or like did a roundhouse kick or something like that. And that wasn't it. What she said was that everyone was playing bingo and one of the other children won. And he jumped up and started clapping and cheering. And normally no one claps and cheers, but now that he did that and he was so excited and happy for the other person who won, even he didn't win, that now everybody else jumps up and cheers every time someone gets bingo and wins. So it was so innocent, and just a good reminder of how beneficial it is to celebrate others, celebrate in their successes, and know that there's room for you to win and someone else to win, and that you can change culture and really change behavior by modeling that positivity, and that energy and that celebration can be contagious.
And what I want to flag up in that as well, that was a great wrap up there, Tiffany. What I want to flag up in that story as well is that not everybody wins in the same way. And so the child won bingo, but he won sort of the culture shift, leadership, if you will. There are many different ways in which we win. We all don't win in the same way. And that is why we can celebrate and elevate each other and support each other, because in doing so, you're having your own wins. And everybody isn't going to win the same place, the same time, at the same rate, for the same reason. But if we celebrate each other, naturally, we change a culture and others follow. And the point is, as leaders, we're able to shift the culture, shift the thinking, and shift the mindsets of others. Thank you very much. for tonight. We'll see you same place next week. Facilitator will be Kadeem.
Thanks, Michelle.
Looking-
Good night, everybody.
Yes. Good night, everybody. Looking forward to next week. Bye-bye.
Loved your story, Tiffany.
Okay.
Good night,
bye-bye.
everyone.
Good night.
Right,
Night.
right.
Night, everybody.
Good night.
Right, so night.
Okay. Good night.
Time to stop the recording.